My husband wants me to accept the child he had with his childhood sweetheart. Marcus and I had been married for 5 years, once a model couple admired by everyone in the city's elite circles. I thought we'd be happy forever, until his helpless childhood sweetheart, Daisy, told me she was pregnant with his child. Marcus claimed Daisy had been drugged, and he only slipped up because he was trying to save her. He also said that since I couldn't have children anyway, I should treat Daisy's baby as my own. But I was the one who was injured saving him, which caused my infertility. Marcus swore to me that he only loved me, and that what happened with Daisy was an accident. But when Daisy tearfully complained to him that I had deliberately hurt the child, he coldly told me to move out and cool off for a few months. I finally understood that the Marcus who had promised to protect me forever was gone. Later, he saw me smiling next to his rival and knelt, desperately begging me to come back. Daisy and Marcus were childhood sweethearts, and their families were longtime family friends. After her parents passed away early, Robert and Eleanor cherished her as if she were their own daughter. I knew they always thought Daisy was a more suitable match for Marcus than I was. That night, Marcus received a call and rushed out. He told me Daisy had been drugged, and it was an emergency. I never imagined that one trip would completely destroy our marriage. I later found out that the way Marcus saved Daisy that night was by sleeping with her. 4 months later, news of Daisy's pregnancy reached me. Marcus knelt before me, explaining, "Grace, I couldn't just abandon her, she's like my own sister. This was truly an accident, and I promise it won't happen again." Looking at this man who once swore he'd only love me, I suddenly felt he was a complete stranger. "Let's get a divorce," I said. Marcus's face instantly went pale. "No, I won't agree to a divorce." The family wielded immense power in the city's elite circles, and with Marcus refusing to sign, the divorce stalled for half a year. I moved out of the Vance estate and lived alone in an apartment I had bought before our marriage. Half a year later, I received news: Daisy had given birth. I drove to the Vance estate. The moment I pushed open the living room door, I saw Marcus, Robert, and Eleanor gathered around Daisy on the sofa, with a swaddled infant in her arms. Marcus was leaning down, playing with the baby, a gentle smile on his face that I hadn't seen in a long time. What a cozy family they made. Marcus looked up and saw me, his expression instantly stiffening. He stood up, wanting to explain, "Grace." I scoffed, "So, when are you going to sign?" Marcus rushed to me, agitated. "Impossible. Daisy and the child won't affect our marriage." Robert and Eleanor's faces darkened, and a hint of malice flickered in Daisy's eyes. I asked coldly, "The child has been born, and you say it won't affect us?" Marcus seemed to grasp at a lifeline. "You can raise this child. Daisy doesn't want to get married or have children, so the baby can be registered under your name. It's just that, she is the birth mother, after all, and will need to visit the child frequently." I almost burst out laughing. "So, I'm supposed to raise your illegitimate child, the birth mother doesn't take any responsibility, and she can visit anytime she wants? And what will the child call me then?" Marcus's face was grim. "You can't have children, isn't this child perfect? Wouldn't it be good for him to have 2 mothers to love him? Why do you have to be so difficult about this?" Robert slammed his hand on the table. "Grace, the moment you return, you disrupt the peace of our entire family." Eleanor lectured me with a cold face, as, "Vance, you should be more understanding. If you really can't manage it, perhaps you should step aside." Marcus tried to intervene, but I smiled. I was just planning on making room for Daisy. I turned to Marcus. "Do you remember why I can't have children?" Marcus's face changed. Of course, he remembered. 3 years ago, in that car accident, I swerved hard to the right to save him, and a steel bar pierced my abdomen. The day the doctor announced I had lost my ability to have children, he knelt by my hospital bed and swore, "It doesn't matter if we don't have children, I just want to be with you." Cold sweat beaded on Marcus's forehead. "I'm sorry for what I did to you, but the Vance family needs an heir. Isn't this just perfect now?" I shook my head. "I don't want anything to do with you anymore." Daisy suddenly came over, holding the baby, her eyes brimming with tears. "Sister, if you're willing to accept him, I'll leave immediately and never appear before you again." Marcus, Robert, and Eleanor immediately protested. Marcus looked at me with disappointment. "Grace, do you really have to be so heartless?" I turned aside, avoiding the child Daisy offered. Daisy suddenly stumbled backward, and Marcus quickly stepped forward to catch her. Daisy cried in floods of tears before me. I know you hate me, but the child is innocent. Robert sharply accused me. Grace, you are too vicious. You won't even spare the child. Marcus's face also hardened. Since you can't accept the child, then continue to live outside, and cool off for a few more months. I looked at him calmly. I hope you come to your senses soon and agree to the divorce. Marcus stiffened, not answering. On the way from the Vance estate, my cell phone vibrated. It was a text message from Marcus. I won't divorce you. You're the one who needs to calm down and think clearly. I turned off my cell phone and pressed the accelerator. In the rearview mirror, the Vance estate grew smaller and smaller. Just like our marriage, there was no going back. I was determined to get a divorce this time. Before that, I had to resign. For the past 6 months, I hadn't been able to get a divorce because Marcus had hinted. Then if I insisted, he would make the company I worked for pay the price. I had worked at this company for 3 years, Peterson had been good to me, and the company wasn't big enough to withstand pressure from the Vance family. I didn't want to implicate innocent people, so I had endured, dragging out a marriage that was already a sham. But that day at the Vance estate, seeing Marcus holding Daisy's child and Robert and Eleanor beaming with satisfaction, I understood that there was no hope left for this marriage. I couldn't drag it out any longer. The next day, I went straight to the company and knocked on Peterson's office door. Peterson, I want to resign, I said. Peterson was silent for a moment, then sighed. Is it because of the Vance family? I nodded. He gave a wry smile and shook his head. I always suspected this day would come. Grace, you're a good employee, but the Vance family, they're not someone we can afford to offend. He didn't finish, but we both understood. Thank you for your care these past few years. I bowed to him and turned to leave. After resigning, I immediately contacted a lawyer. The lawyer asked me, what are your requirements regarding property division? I shook my head. I only want my own possessions. I don't want a single penny of the Vance family's money. The lawyer hesitated, then finally drafted the agreement according to my wishes. That afternoon, I entered the Vance estate once more, holding the divorce agreement in black and white. When saw me, his brow was furrowed, and his eyes held a hint of impatience and weariness. Grace, have you finally decided to come back? He asked coldly. Have you had enough of your tantrum? I didn't answer, simply handing him the divorce agreement. He froze for a moment, took the agreement, and his face instantly darkened. Grace, do you really have to take things this far with me over such a trivial matter? He looked at me with disappointment. Do you have to make the Vance family a laughy stock for everyone? I looked at him, enunciating each word, yes. Marcus's face turned ashen. He stared at me, his eyes alien and cold. Fine. Very well. Since you're so eager, leave the agreement and get out. He slammed the agreement onto the table, his voice laced with biting cold. I'll have your worthless belongings packed up and sent to your apartment. Just then, Daisy came downstairs, a timid expression on her face. Marcus. She gently tugged at Marcus's sleeve, her voice soft. Don't talk to sister like that. She turned to me, her eyes slightly red. Sister, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Marcus immediately took her hand tenderly and turned to me. Grace, Daisy has conceded enough. Can't you, for the sake of our years of marriage, take a step back too? Watching them, I found it utterly ridiculous. I said faintly, where do you want me to retreat to? To stand by like an outsider, watching you three enjoy your happy family? I turned to leave, but he suddenly spoke again. Oh, and Grace, he sneered, that expensive coat you're wearing, I bought it for you, didn't I? Since you're getting a divorce, I suppose you'll be too embarrassed to wear it anymore? I looked out at the pouring rain through the large French windows in the living room and suddenly smiled. Under's ashen face and the hidden smugness in Daisy's eyes, I slowly took off the expensive coat and casually threw it on the floor. Then, wearing only a thin blouse, I turned and walked out of the Vance estate's main door. Behind me, I heard Daisy feigning concern. Marcus, should we ask sister to stay? The rain is so heavy outside. Marcus's irritated voice carried to me, let her go. She's so stubborn anyway. I paused briefly, then stepped without hesitation into the cold downpour. The rain instantly soaked me, and a biting chill seeped into my bones. 6 months of suppression, anger, and grievances all erupted at that moment. My abdomen began to cramp, my body grew heavier and heavier, and my vision blurred. Just before I lost consciousness, I instinctively dialed Marcus's number. The call connected, and his voice was impatient. Aren't you getting a divorce? Why are you still calling me? My heart completely froze over. My fingers trembling, I hung up the phone. I couldn't hold on any longer and collapsed by the roadside. When I woke up again, I was lying in a hospital bed, my nostrils filled with the smell of disinfectant. A tall figure sat by the bed, Julian, Marcus's rival. Seeing I was awake, he said calmly, "You collapsed by the roadside. I happened to be passing by." Julian called the doctor. The doctor frowned and told me, "Your stomach ulcer is already very severe. If you delay any longer, it might perforate." Lying in the hospital bed, my stomach felt like it was being churned repeatedly by a blunt knife, the pain so intense I had to breathe carefully. For the past 6 months, I had barely eaten a proper meal. Insomnia and vomiting had become routine. Marcus's indifference, Daisy's provocations, and the Vance family's contempt were like an invisible mountain, suffocating me. And now, I had finally completely broken down. Julian went out and bought me a steaming bowl of congee. He walked quickly to the bedside, his voice very soft. "I bought some plain congee. The doctor said you can only eat this right now." I struggled to prop myself up, and my stomach churned again, cold sweat instantly drenching my back. Julian quickly supported me, one hand steadily propping my back, the other handing me a trash can. After I finished vomiting, he offered me warm water, his movements practiced as if he'd done this countless times. "Thank you," I said hoarsely. He gently patted my back, then picked up the bowl of congee, scooped a spoonful, blew on it to cool it, and brought it to my lips. I was stunned. Julian, the famous young master of the Hayes family in the city's elite circles, was now feeding me spoonful by spoonful, like a dedicated caretaker. "What? Don't you like my service?" he asked, raising an eyebrow, a hint of teasing in his tone. I shook my head and took a sip. The congee was the perfect temperature, neither too hot nor too cold. I hesitated for a moment, then asked, Why are you helping me?" Julian paused, his eyes darkening slightly, but quickly returned to normal. "I just can't stand Marcus's face." I didn't press him further. That night, my stomach hurt terribly. I curled up in bed, biting my lips tightly, but noticed. He got up, poured a glass of warm water, took out the medicine the doctor had prescribed, and helped me take it. "If it hurts, cry out. Don't hold it in," he whispered, his palm gently covering my stomach. The warmth seeped through my hospital gown, strangely easing some of the pain. I closed my eyes, but tears uncontrollably streamed down my face. For the past 6 months, I had grown accustomed to bearing everything alone, to Robert and Eleanor's cold stares and mockery. I had also grown accustomed to Marcus's perfunctory attention and neglect. But now, someone was patiently taking care of me in my most vulnerable state. Julian didn't speak, he just wiped away the tears from the corners of my eyes with his thumb, then took my hand. A few days later, my stomach pain finally subsided, but I was still very weak. Julian stayed by my side almost constantly. Even the doctor smiled and said, "Your boyfriend is so attentive." I instinctively wanted to deny it, but Julian had already naturally replied, "It's nothing less than she deserves." I was stunned for a moment. Until one late night, the only sound in the ward was the faint hum of medical monitors. Moonlight streamed through the gap in the curtains, falling on Julian's profile, outlining his deep features. He suddenly spoke, his voice very low. "Grace, I've liked you for a long time." My heart leaped, and my fingers unconsciously clutched the corner of the blanket. "I noticed you back in college," he said, looking directly at me without flinching. "It's just that Marcus got to you first back then." I didn't know what to say. I wasn't divorced yet, hadn't emerged from the shadow of my previous marriage, and wasn't even sure if I could trust love again. Julian seemed to see through my hesitation. He gently took my hand, and the warmth from his palm made me tremble slightly. "It's okay, I can wait," he said, his voice soft yet undeniably firm. "I've waited this long, I can wait even longer. Until you're truly ready, until you've completely moved past everything. I'll be here waiting for you." My nose stung, and tears almost fell again. After being discharged, I returned to my apartment and found a cardboard box haphazardly taped up by the door. Opening it, I saw my personal belongings from the Vance estate. Clothes, books, jewelry, all haphazardly piled, some even crushed out of shape. What infuriated me the most was that the music box, which held my childhood memories, had been completely destroyed. Trembling, I dialed Marcus's number and, gritting my teeth, asked, "What is the meaning of this?" On the other end, his voice was careless. "Those things aren't worth anything. So what if they're broken? If you mind, I'll pay for them. His indifference and contempt snapped me back to reality. I hung up and blocked all of Marcus's contact information, scoffing at my past foolishness. Then, I thought of the patent sitting at Vance. It was something my father left behind, and it was also why the Vance family initially agreed to my marriage. For years, Vance had remained a leader in the industry, thanks to this patent. And now, the patent license was about to expire. The vast profits the Vance family had earned from this patent over the years should now be relinquished. I walked out of the Vance estate's main door without looking back. I later learned that Marcus stood at the French windows, watching me leave. He almost ran after me, wanting to beg me to stay, but Daisy was standing behind him, holding their child. He clenched his fists, but ultimately didn't follow. I had called him then, only to be met with his coldest, most impatient voice, asking why I was calling if I wanted a divorce. After a few seconds of silence, I hung up. I later learned that when I didn't contact him for days, he furiously packed my belongings, carelessly throwing them into a box, even deliberately smashing my most cherished music box, a memento from my father. When I called him again to confront him about it, he just sneered, "Those things aren't worth anything. So what if they're broken? If you mind, I'll pay for them." Then, the call was abruptly cut. I later learned that after a month of no contact from me, Marcus grew restless. He tried sending me a text message asking where I was, only for a glaring red exclamation mark to appear on his screen, indicating it wasn't delivered. He immediately tried calling, but a cold, automated voice repeatedly informed him my number was disconnected. All means of contacting me, WeChat, text messages, email, were severed. Panic reportedly set in for him. He rushed to my company, only to be told by the receptionist that I had resigned a month prior. The news reportedly hit him like a lightning bolt. He reportedly staggered back, his mind buzzing, finally grasping that I was truly leaving him for good. For the following days, Marcus frantically searched for me. I later discovered that he spent his nights alone in his empty bedroom, staring blankly at his cell phone screen. My profile picture had become blank, and our chat history ended with my last message, "You truly disgust me." He reportedly began to suffer from insomnia, lying awake night after night, my face filling his mind, my smiling face, my quiet reading, and the coldness in my eyes the last time I looked at him. Files from his assistant reportedly piled up, but he lacked the strength to even open them. I later learned that he grew thinner day by day, stubble darkening his chin, his eyes blue shot, looking as if he had suffered from a severe illness. I imagine he must have begun to replay the last 5 years in his mind, recalling how I had given up my career for him, endured his parents' difficulties, and even lost my ability to have children to save him. And what had he given me in return? Betrayal, neglect, humiliation. I imagine he must have buried his face in his hands, letting out a choked cry. He regretted it, yet stubbornly told himself he was not wrong, that it was for his family's future and ours. As for Daisy, she was just an accident, a responsibility he had to bear. He believed I loved him so much that I would understand his difficulties. He thought that once he found me, he would compensate me well, promising never to let me suffer again. However, every time he thought he found a clue, it would inexplicably vanish. He vaguely felt an invisible force obstructing him. He didn't know that Julian had used his connections and resources to sever all of Marcus's paths to finding me. Standing in his empty estate, Marcus reportedly experienced a profound sense of loneliness and despair for the first time. Everything he once had was falling apart. The manor was like a sanctuary, far from the hustle and bustle of Evergreen City. The morning sunlight streamed through the curtains onto the cream-colored carpet, and the air was filled with the scent of flowers and damp earth. Here, I finally found true relaxation and healing. Julian's family showed me a rare kindness and open-mindedness. Grandpa and Grandma were typical old-school figures from the city's elite circles, yet they were exceptionally tolerant of me. They would take my hand, smiling as they reminisced about Julian's childhood antics. Grandma would half-jokingly complain that he used to pretend to be a playboy to avoid blind dates, much to the exasperation of their elders. She mysteriously leaned closer to me, lowering her voice. "Julian has always had someone in his heart, but due to unfortunate circumstances, they never managed to be together. The family treated me like one of their own, and that long-lost warmth of kinship slowly melted my heart. I began to wonder if I could truly have a home again." On my birthday, Julian prepared a unique celebration for me. There was no deliberate extravagance, yet every detail showed his understanding and thoughtfulness. He invited my favorite indie band, ordered my preferred desserts, and even set up a starry sky projection in the Manor's glass conservatory. That was something I had mentioned casually once, how I loved lying on the roof to watch the stars when I was little. I stood under the artificial starry sky, looking up at the twinkling lights, a smile unconsciously forming on my lips. Julian stood beside me and softly asked, "Do you like it?" I nodded, a long-lost warmth welling up inside me. Midway through the party, an uninvited guest suddenly burst in. Marcus, like a ghost, rushed into the brightly lit manor, instantly shattering the harmonious atmosphere. He was wearing a wrinkled suit, his beard scruffy, and his eyes bloodshot. He stared at me intently, murmuring, "Grace, why are you here? Come back with me." I instinctively took a step back. Marcus lunged forward, trying to grab me, but I dodged as if struck by lightning, my voice cold as ice. "Mr. Marcus, we're already divorced. Where I go is none of your business." Julian quickly stepped in front of me, shielding me, and looked coldly at Marcus. "Mr. Marcus, it seems you still haven't understood the situation." Marcus's face went pale, and he roared furiously, "Nonsense. I haven't signed the divorce agreement. We're still married. Are you holding my wife captive? You just want to use her to fight my Vance family." Julian scoffed. "Captive? Mr. Marcus, do you not know how much Grace has suffered because of you? That day, you forced her to take off her expensive coat and walk out into the pouring rain. She called you just before she collapsed. Do you remember what you said on that call?" Marcus froze, recalling the call he received that day, and was instantly speechless. Julian added coldly, "As for being married, that won't be for much longer." Julian gave Marcus no chance to breathe. He understood Vance's lifeline too well. The family, though outwardly prosperous, was internally riddled with holes, overextended business lines, cash flow dependent on bank loans, and team management hampered by Marcus's arrogant personality. Julian knew all these vulnerabilities. First, the supply chain. Julian secured exclusive cooperation rights with 3 of Vance's core suppliers by offering 15% above market price. Next, talent. News of Vance's R&D director and his entire core team collectively defecting made headlines in the financial section. Finally, capital. When Corp's largest partner suddenly switched allegiance during a board meeting, Marcus finally realized that Julian had begun laying out his plan half a year ago. Vance's financial director reportedly fainted during the monthly meeting. Calls from banks demanding repayment echoed through the entire CEO's office. The once magnificent Vance building now resembled a deflated balloon. Robert reportedly slammed a teacup at Marcus's feet. "This is the great company you've been running. You couldn't even keep your own wife, and now you're losing the family fortune." Eleanor reportedly cried, grabbing her son's arm. "Marcus, just sign the divorce agreement. What's so good about that, Grace? The family clearly intends to destroy us." Marcus reportedly stood before the French windows, the glass reflecting his hollowed-out cheeks. 3 months prior, he was the most dazzling young master in the city's elite circles. Now, the cuffs of his blouse were frayed. Marcus finally agreed to the divorce. I was arranging flowers when I received the news. After trimming a superfluous branch from a rose, I said to Julian, "Thank you." There was no wild joy, no feeling of triumph. It was like peeling off a bandage that should have been removed long ago. It hurt a little, but mostly, it was the relief of finally being able to breathe freely. The air in the courthouse was as cold as ice. Outside, the sky was overcast, as if even the weather was announcing the end of this relationship. Marcus arrived half an hour earlier than the agreed time. He was wrapped in a wrinkled old expensive coat, his face pale, his eyes bloodshot. Seeing me get out of the car, he stumbled toward me, his icy fingers desperately clutching my wrist. "Grace." His voice was hoarse beyond recognition. "Daisy is like my sister, she's an orphan and has no one. Can't you understand my need to care for her?" I calmly pulled my hand away. "Marcus, I am also an orphan." My voice was as cold as ice. "You once said you would always be my support. Now, you prioritize caring for your sister, but who will understand my betrayed heart?" His pupils constricted suddenly, and he grabbed my shoulders. "I'll send them abroad. They'll never appear before you again in this lifetime. Can we start over?" I gently shook my head. "It's too late." He released me as if stung, then suddenly laughed hysterically. How can you be sure Julian is sincere? He's just using you to strike at me. When I was hospitalized this time, he was with me the whole time. He knows what I like to eat, he remembers my preferences. Most importantly, I looked directly into his eyes, his family respects me. Marcus collapsed onto the bench as if his spine had been removed. The crisp click of the official stamp echoed. 5 years of marriage, ultimately reduced to 2 divorce certificates. Stepping out of the courthouse, I took a deep breath. The air carried the fresh scent of budding spring plants. That same afternoon, my lawyer, accompanied by notary public representatives, sealed 3 of Vance's production lines. Those were the cash cows supported by my father's patent technology. Marcus began frantically sending me text messages from new numbers. Grace, do you really not want me anymore? I blocked all unknown numbers. Until Eleanor stormed into my studio. Wicked woman. Eleanor panted violently. We never should have let a wretch like you into the Vance family. I looked up at them and smiled faintly. So, we're divorced now. Everyone's happy. Before could raise his cane to smash my computer, the security guards promptly escorted them out. Through the glass door, the distorted curses of the 2 elderly people gradually turned into wails. I called Julian. Let's get Italian food tonight. A light chuckle came from the other end. Okay, I'll get your favorite. The family's decline came faster than expected. Ever since I reclaimed the patent, Vance's core production lines were forced to halt, and its stock price plummeted. Banks began demanding repayment, and partners withdrew their investments one after another. The once glorious Vance family plunged into a financial crisis due to a broken cash flow. Marcus came to see me once. He stood downstairs from my studio, looking as if he had aged dramatically overnight. Grace, his voice was hoarse, the Vance family can't hold on any longer. I stood on the steps, looking down at him calmly. So what? Can you? He began with difficulty. Can you lend the patent license to the Vance family again for a while? Just consider it. Consider it what? I interrupted him. As pity for you? Or that I'm a fool? He was speechless. I turned to leave, but he suddenly grabbed my wrist, despair in his voice. Are you really going to watch me die? I shook off his hand and walked into the building without looking back. As the glass door closed, I heard him collapse to his knees. But I didn't turn around. Another half a year passed. Julian proposed to me under the Eiffel in Paris. He knelt on one knee, holding a pink diamond ring, his gaze focused and tender. Grace, will you marry me? I extended my hand, smiling. Yes. He ruefully placed the ring on my ring finger, then stood up and held me tightly. A week before the wedding, as I was trying on my wedding gown, my cell phone suddenly vibrated. It was a text message from secretary, with a news link attached. I clicked on it, and the headline read, Former Tycoon Vance and Mistress Lynn each. My finger paused on the screen as I calmly scrolled down. The news detailed the entire story. Vance had officially declared bankruptcy 3 months prior, and all its assets were liquidated by the bank. Marcus blamed Daisy for everything, believing her appearance led me to reclaim the patent, causing the Vance family's complete downfall. During a heated argument, Marcus unexpectedly discovered that Daisy's being drugged that year was entirely a self-staged deception. In a fit of rage, he reportedly punched and kicked Daisy, who, in self-defense, grabbed a fruit knife and stabbed him. Marcus then reportedly wrestled the knife away and frantically stabbed Daisy. Ultimately, both of them fell in a pool of blood. The news concluded by mentioning that Robert and Eleanor had aged dramatically overnight and left Evergreen City with the 2-year-old child. I turned off my cell phone and looked at myself in the mirror. The white wedding gown elegantly contoured my figure, and my makeup was exquisite and proper. Strangely, seeing this news, I felt no ripples in my heart. The betrayals, humiliations, and anger that once caused me unbearable pain now, in retrospect, felt like someone else's story. Grace? Julian pushed open the door, holding the wedding schedule. Seeing me staring at my cell phone in a daze, he asked with concern, "What's wrong?" I handed him my cell phone. He read the news, his brow furrowing slightly, then he took my hand. "Do we need to postpone the wedding?" I shook my head and smiled at him. "No, everything is ready." He carefully observed my expression, and only after confirming I was truly unaffected did he relax, then turn to discuss the wedding details with me. Sunlight streamed through the French windows, falling on our clasped hands. His palm was warm and dry, providing a reassuring strength. Listening to his deep, gentle voice, I suddenly felt that fate had been kind to me. It had made me endure the most painful betrayal, but it had also given me the best compensation. I softly called him, Julian. Thank you. He paused, then understood my meaning and smiled as he pulled me into his embrace. Silly, I should be thanking you. I leaned on his shoulder and closed my eyes. The past faded like smoke, and our future was just beginning.